First of all, Wrighty, thanks so much for joining us here on Astro Supersport. I think congratulations are in order. Premier League Hall of Fame inductee. About time, isn't it?
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. I wouldn't say about time. It's very humbling. It's very humbling news, and it's kind of recognition of a journey that it's the Hall of Fame. We're dealing with the elite, so to get yourself put into that kind of company, it's very humbling. So it's something that's not sunk in, probably won't sink in for a long time with me.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about rivalries in Premier League football and English football as well, and what sort of shapes a good rivalry, the ingredients that goes into it. Obviously, a lot has happened to both Manchester United and Arsenal since you've been there as well. But do you think where these two clubs are at right now, do you think the rivalry is still a big one?
The rivalry will always be a big one because of the clubs and the history and the fact that as long as one's called Arsenal, one's called Man United, there's always going to be some one-upmanship on winning that particular game. Obviously, both clubs are not in the places that I'm sure they'd want to be. Of course, they want to be doing what Man City and Liverpool are doing, challenging and playing great football and winning stuff. But at the moment, they're both going through very transitional periods. I think Arsenal may be even further on than Man United in what they're doing, especially when you consider how many players are probably going to be leaving Man United this summer, and Arsenal with a very young squad doing some really good things like we saw the other day. So, I'd have to say the rivalry will always be there, but as in respect of the stature of the clubs and where they are, that'll always be there in the stature. But where they are and where they're playing at the moment, they're not where they really want to be, both of those clubs.
But in your opinion, do you think it is the biggest rivalry? Obviously, that's the Liverpool-Manchester United, but the difference between Liverpool and United now, the gap is massive. There's a much closer gap between Arsenal and Manchester United.
What do you mean at the moment?
Yeah, the biggest rivalry.
Yeah, well, I think when you say the biggest rivalry, I think the biggest rivalry is while they're happening. So while Manchester City and Liverpool are doing what they're doing, it's the biggest. It's amazing, and I think that as years go by, if they carry on doing what they're doing, that rivalry will just continue to grow. Whereas what will happen with Manchester City is when they play against Man United, and until Man United get themselves back into a place where you can call it a rivalry that's going to test Manchester City will be looking at Liverpool as their rivals. And with Arsenal and again with Manchester United, once you get yourself back to where you're meant to be in the stature of the clubs, the rivalries just pick up from where they left off.
At what point did you realise internally there was something so intense between Manchester United and Arsenal? I think for some people it's obviously the Pizzagate fixture, but I don't know what it was for you.
No, the fact is that Man United were just the yardstick for everybody. They were so good. They were continually winning. They were the serial winners. And they were the team that you're always chasing. So when you get yourself into a situation where you can start challenging them and giving them a proper fight and in the end beating them, that's what it's about. Man United are like what Liverpool and Manchester City are now. They're the yardstick for people to try and attain, reach and surpass. That's what it comes down to. And when we played against Man United with Roy Keane and Giggs and Cantona and all those great players, what they have, Beckham and everybody, the fact is that you want to be playing against the best. You want to be equal to the best, and you have to try and beat the best to do that.
So let's talk about Arsenal's season then. It's been a bit of a topsy-turvy one. Obviously, it was a disastrous start at the start of the season in August when they didn't win any games. And then you had a good period of time, a patch of good form. And then the Aubameyang became an issue, which also to some levels also had its positives. And then there was a tough period again, and then obviously they just won against Chelsea, which was a big win. How do you try to make sense of Arsenal's season?
Very young team, very young manager, young CEO, young recruitment, young Pierre Mertesacker, Edu, Gaspar, Mikel, Vinay. They're all young people, all learning on the job with a very young team, with a team and a club that we had to get rid of a lot of players, try to bring a lot of players in. We've had to promote players from the youth team, and we've got a manager that's young enough and intense enough and good enough to take on this project. So you're going to have to expect with a team that's so youngest in the Premier League, you're going to expect some inconsistency. That's what we saw at the start of the season. We saw them go through a good patch. We saw them lose 3 games on the spin and then come back and beat Chelsea. So what it all says to me with Arsenal is that there's definitely something there. And everybody just has to keep faith with the manager and what he's trying to do with the young players and hope that in the summer they're going to invest more into the team, because what we saw against Chelsea was a team that with a couple more top players, you're going to start getting back and challenging top four, no problem. I think that this season, if Arsenal can finish sixth, like I said at the start of the season, it'd be a fantastic season. At the moment, they're in and around fourth position. I think it would be an overachievement, but at the same time, if you can then get yourself into that situation, then we spend some decent money in the summer, then maybe you can build on that. But at the moment, the way the season's going, it's what you'd expect from a young team and a young club in respect of the people that's running it.
So you believe Mikel Arteta is the right man? What is it about him, the biggest indicator that he is the right man for this?
Because he's a very good coach. You could see players have improved under him. You know, he's no nonsense. He sticks to his guns with what he's saying. You know, we can see it's a project. It's something that needs a manager that's got the intensity and the will and the skill to be able to bring this big club back to where it needs to be. We've kind of got our identity back in the way we're playing and where we're trying to play. And so when you look at Mikel and what he's doing, it's perfect. It's perfect, and for me, with the age of the club, and for me with the age of the team, he's on course to do what he needs to do. It's going to be interesting to see who the signings are going to be.
Now, talking about reviving a big club, Manchester United obviously also had an equally confusing season as well. Just confirmed the appointment of Erik Ten Hag. Do you think just a change in manager alone is enough to revive them? No,
but I'm sure that Ten Hag, we've seen that his credentials are very good. But what we've seen with Man United, there's a lot that's got to be going on upstairs in the way they're running the club as well. When you hear ex-Man United players talking about it, it's not just continually changing managers and changing players, because if that was the remedy, then Man United wouldn't be in the position they're in. Something has to happen upstairs, director of football, and the way they're running the club. The fans are not happy. So to bring in another manager to do what with, you know, there's going to be a few players that's going to be probably leaving Man United. You know, so it's who's he going to get in? How long is that going to take? Is he going to hit the ground running? It's Manchester United, so people will expect him to do it. So you have to feel that it's a massive job that Ten Hag's taken on. You hope that he does well from a coaching point of view, but in respect of from upstairs and support and what he needs, you're hoping that they're looking to change stuff upstairs as well.
So where do you stand on the Harry Maguire debate? Because obviously some fans don't believe it's good enough, but some fans just think he's just not being used in the right system. Like maybe similarly to England, if he was used the way that England does, he can be world-class at times. I don't know, because at some points he's been made into a meme as well. Do you think all this criticism is grossly unfair on Harry Maguire?
Social media would do that to you. And what you see with players is, with bad form, you get memes, you get everything, it all comes with it, because that's how people are. People are cruel. The guy's going through bad form. He's going through poor form, and it seems to be lasting a lot longer than it should. That happens. He's a top footballer. Harry Maguire didn't ask to be paid, for them to pay 80 million for him, but he's gone to Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and with that comes a massive amount of pressure that, yes, you see him making mistakes that you don't believe that an 80 million pound player who's been there this long should be making, but at the same time, it's poor form. For me, a poorly constructed team and the way they play, and he's exposed a lot, and he gets exposed a lot. He makes a lot of mistakes, and with that is going to come criticism, and that happens in the game.
I think we all watched Arsene Wenger's film as well, where he spoke about regretting dedicating so much time to football that he didn't have a lot of time for any other things. And it was a very deeply personal moment for him, and it evoked a lot of retrospectiveness amongst fans. How did you process all of that?
Well, it was very refreshing to hear him say that, because what it says to me is that managers maybe need to take a bit of time out and smell the roses, smell the coffee sometimes, because it can be very intense. Premier League can be very intense, top end of the Premier League, and when you're challenging for things, it can be very intense. So for Arsene Wenger to say that he wished he did that, then, you know, it's something that managers maybe should look at, because he's a very intelligent man, and if he's saying that, then people should listen to that.
Well, one thing I know is you're a big supporter in women's football. Would you ever, and it's something that is growing in Malaysia, would you ever be considered coming down? Would you ever consider coming down to Malaysia, not just to support obviously women's football, but just coming down to visit the country?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We'll come to Malaysia. You know, it's something that I want to do. I've been to Malaysia before, but I'd like to go to Malaysia again, and I'd like to go to India as well. I haven't been to India. I want to take my wife and my daughters to India as well.
That'd be very interesting. But thanks, Wrighty, so much for your time here today,
pleasure.
and we look forward to even more Premier League action and hearing your thoughts on them as well in the future.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's a pleasure. Pleasure talking to you.